All right, so welcome. I'll turn off my mic. We're getting a little bit of feedback. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Oscar, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Awesome. So we're going to operate on the same microphone. So welcome, guys. We're back with our workshop series. Glad to have you on the line. Marian just finished her first workshop on Saturday. So last week we talked about curriculum and what our goals are and how we can have the right activities to kind of match those goals. And now some of you were already asking towards the end. Marian, you were asking a great question. Well, how do I measure my results? How do I see what I achieved? What are some other tools that are out there? And so without further ado, I bring to you favorite experts in the area, Laura Budzina, who is our monitoring evaluation manager here at IDIN. So she supports a lot of some of you she's already been supporting in different ways as organizers, but also and if everyone can hear me, would be great, please. And so she has a lot of tools, but today she's going to kind of lay out a great framework for us, a few tools, and just take any questions that you guys have.
Great. Thanks, Cher. It's great to meet you guys. I've met a few of you in person already, and it's great to see your faces. It's been a while, 1 or 2 years in some cases. So hi to you guys, and also hi to those I haven't met. This is going to be a lot of fun. So my name is Laura. If you haven't met me before, I do monitoring, evaluation, and learning for the whole IDIN program. And since the IDIN program features a lot of learning activities like IDDS, like CCB, like the workshops that are held at innovation centers, I've been doing a lot of things about how to measure the results of workshops. And today I'm going to walk you through some of the ways that I've thought about it and that monitoring and evaluation people around the world have thought about it, so that you can use some of those techniques when you are implementing your own workshops now and in the future. So I'm going to share my screen, if that will work. And not working? Okay, great. And I'm going to just open the slideshow. Can everybody see that slideshow and still hear me?
Some people are on the phone.
Yes.
Oh, okay, yeah. Why don't let me email this first so that for those of you who are on the phone, you can follow along with the slides as well. I'm going to just email this out to the group. Sorry, I should have done this earlier, but we will do it now. And that's better than never.
Carl, are you in Nairobi right now?
Hi, Cher.
Hey. It's good to hear you.
Hello?
Hello. Yeah, we can hear you.
Hi, Yuna.
Hi, Carl.
Hi, Laura.
Hello. It's good to see you. All right.
Casey.
Now that everybody got to look at my inbox too. So I have sent this PowerPoint for those of you who want to look at it later or who'd like to follow along that way. For those of you who are on the computer, you can see the screen now, I hope. So we're going to talk a little bit about measurement, measuring impact, measuring results, measuring feedback, all those different kinds of things, and hopefully this will be useful for you guys. So I'm going to start out just by sharing a couple of quotes that I've actually just pulled from my email. These are quotes from network members who have been doing all different kinds of educational initiatives, either working on innovation centers. Oh, is it not showing anymore? Sorry. We're going to show technology. Amazing how it works. We're going to get back to, it thinks I'm sharing the screen. Hold on, are you?
Can you guys see the,
Are you guys seeing my screen still or no?
Which one?
I'm going to start it again.
The PowerPoint. Can you see the PowerPoint?
There we go. Now we can see the
Great.
screen.
You see all her desktop.
All of the desktop, all of my messy files.
Yeah.
And okay, great. I think we figured it out. All right. So I wanted to share just a few quotes that I've pulled from my, these are just from conversations I've had with people around the world who are grappling with this. So the first one is from Ellie Suzuki, who's been working on a makerspace and innovation center. And she talks about how as global minimum is growing rapidly, we have become increasingly aware that it's important for us to track our students and measure our impact and outcomes beyond anecdotal student stories. I also was talking to George from KNUST, who many of you know, and he says, my experience is that CCB is doing something, and this something needs to be effectively tracked, monitored, evaluated, analyzed, and explained. And many of you know Max, who has been working on an innovation center in Pakistan, and he said, was asking the question, what is the impact these spaces can have? I have a suspicion that these are not so straightforward. I think a sense of community and answer, but how do you measure that? So these are just small of quotes from conversations I've had with people who are interested in measuring the results of their educational efforts. And that's what we're going to try to tackle today. So you guys answered this question last week. My workshop will be a success if blank. And my understanding is there was a pretty big variety of responses to that question. Everything from people will go on to produce new projects and they'll keep designing things in the future, to they will feel more confident in themselves, a whole different variety of things. I don't know if you wanted to share some examples from that.
Share a couple of your examples.
Yeah, I'd love to hear that. What are some examples that you guys shared last week? My workshop will be a success if.
Oscar.
I guess it will be a success if I get feedback from the participants, but not just, but all throughout the process, like I constantly have feedback from them, so I know I'm doing things right.
Mm-hmm. So your workshop will be success if you're able to gather feedback and then use that feedback to make it a good experience for the participants.
Yeah, during the workshop. So if I'm not doing something so well, I can know and give them the chance to give me feedback right away.
Great.
I think Hewan's not on the line now, but he had a good one last week too that said his would be a success if he just opens up people to the opportunity of the international development space. And Marian, I think you had a good one as well. Do you want to share yours? Do you remember what yours was?
Oh, yes, sure. So for me, if I can remember, I had written that my workshop would be a success if I could get the students to start thinking outside the box, something along those lines. Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, so
yeah.
This is a great starting point. I really like this question because when we ask this question at IDDS, we always get a huge variety of answers. And that speaks to the fact that different people are trying to get different things out of a training. Even when it's the same training, there might be two people teaching that training and they might have different answers to this question, which is what makes this whole project a little bit tricky. And so it's why we try to have conversations together about what it is that we see as success and what it is we might try to measure. So first we're going to talk a little bit about why bother measuring, and then we'll talk about how and what. So my first question to you guys is, who needs this information? Who would need information about the impact or the results of your training or how successful your training has been? And why might they need that information?
Victor, what do you What do you think of this question?
Who need the data?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Of the result, I think you're asking.
Right.
Yeah.
Who needs data and why?
First, I had Jonah asked us who need them.
That's absolutely a correct answer to the question. Fiona needs them. Why do you think she needs them?
I think the IDN is a big project, and it also wants to measure the result. But also, I would need the information.
Mm-hmm.
Because to me, I do that because I will feel good if people start considering what I've been teaching them, and I will feel good actually if I find that what I've done have bring some effect to other people. So I will feel good. That's just a feeling.
Yeah.
So me and Yona need the information.
You and Yona.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, I could be, in this case, I'm the funder or the donor. And so it's the one that has funded this workshop, but to think even more broadly, and yours was an excellent answer, Victor, is that, if you want to have other workshops in the future, you may want to speak to them and share the results of what you've been doing and what you've been achieving.
Exactly right. So funders need it, you need it. Who else might need it?
I don't know if people would have found out that I've done the workshop, will also need to know the effect and if they can also get the workshop.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
other people,
The participants, right? Because otherwise, why should they take their time to come and spend their time in the workshop if they don't know if it's any good, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I think that's exactly right. So you guys got my main categories here. So what I was going to say is, first, you need information to know, is this working? Are we achieving our mission? What are we learning? And how can we do better? And Victor, I love what you said about to feel good, to celebrate. When we succeed, we know that, so we can celebrate that. That's really important. Second is your funders or your supporters. It helps them make a decision of whether or not to invest in you. Could we even choose you from all of the different workshops we could fund? And also, if we already have supported you, what have you achieved with the investment that we've made? So that we can also, report to our constituents about what we've achieved all collectively. So funders like Yona and like others are looking for this information. And then finally, your customers. Should we buy what you're selling? Should we take our time to participate in your workshop? And what have you done for our community? What kind of value are you offering to me and to my community? So that's who's looking for this data. And you can use data in a couple of different ways. So I actually just learned this kind of 3-part why in a couple of days ago. So I'm excited to use it with you guys today. So number one is you could use data to prove something. You could use it to demonstrate to others that your workshop matters, that your workshop has impact, it's worth supporting, it's worthwhile. And this will help you answer questions about the effect it's having and why it's worth it. What's the value of your program? But you also want to use data to improve your program, to manage it, to iterate it, to go around the design cycle and keep improving your program for the future. And you can get that kind of information from both your participants, as you mentioned, Oscar, and also from other organizers who have been helping you out with it by reflecting and thinking about how it could be better. And then finally, you can use data to choose or prioritize. So let's say you've been doing a bunch of different kinds of workshops, and you're finding that the electronics workshops that you're doing are really effective, and the woodworking workshops you're doing just have not really been so effective. So that can help you decide, well, I only have a grant of $1,000. How am I going to spread that out? Maybe I should do more of one kind than another because I know it's more effective. And so it helps you prioritize and decide where to focus your efforts and your resources.
Can I add something? Sure. It's kind of going to the slide before, but one other person that you might be sharing with and that you already are right now is each other.
Yeah.
I get requests, I think Yona and I get requests all the time from some of you even saying, hey, do you have this activity or do you have that? So as much as we're continuing to build our repository, and then those cycle back to you in terms of what's available to you as well.
Yeah, sharing with your community and workshop deliverers, I think is a great, great example of who could use this data. So that's a little bit about the why. And here's just a handful of questions you might be curious about. You know, the participants that you're working with, what do they expect to get out of your workshop? Did your workshop meet the expectations that they had? How happy were they? How satisfied with your workshop? What did they like best? What did they like least? What are their suggestions and recommendations to improve it? Then how did the organizers feel about it? How do they think it could be improved? Then some more specific questions like, are we targeting the right participants? Are we doing the right activities? How should we choose the right audience or the right content for our workshop? And then what's happening next? When the workshop is over, what's happening with the participants? Are they engaging like we thought they were? Are they not? Who is engaging and who's not engaging, and what might be the difference there? So all sorts of really interesting questions that we can begin to explore if we have a monitoring and evaluation strategy. But this can all seem very overwhelming because there's a lot of different questions we could answer. And so most of the questions that I get when I'm helping people think through their M&E plans is like, where do I start? Where do I even begin with all of this? And my recommendation is starting with something called a theory of change. Now that sounds a little jargony and a little overcomplicated for what it really is. All it really is a sentence that explains how your program works, how your workshop works. And it reads like a statement like this. If we do X, then Y will result. If we deliver this workshop, then this other thing will happen. We'll achieve this particular goal. And by going through the exercise of writing a theory of change, of writing out this sentence, it helps you and your team build agreement and consensus around what your goals are. It helps you focus the content of your workshop on the specific goals you want to achieve. Yeah. And then it helps you focus on what you should measure, so you can test whether or not your workshop is doing what you say it will do. So there's a lot of good benefits of going through this exercise. So I'm going to show you a little bit how it works. It's usually divided into 4 basic parts: the input, the output, the outcome, and the impact. The input is the thing you have. It's just the thing. What do you have? You have a workshop. You have maybe some great trainers, some materials, a great classroom to work in. That's your input. That's the thing you have and you have to offer the world. The output is delivering that thing to someone else. It's sort of like the participants you're teaching, for instance. You know, we have this workshop and it has now reached 50 participants. That's all an output is I have something and then I deliver it. But then it gets a little bit more complicated with outcomes and impact. The outcome is, okay, well, I delivered this workshop. So what? What happens next? What are these people going to take away from this? And then what are they going to do with it? What do I envision the participants in my workshop doing? And then the impact is, what is my vision for how the community will be different if my workshop is able to reach more and more people? So those are the 4 basic parts. The input is the thing. The output is delivering the thing to a person. The outcome is what that person does next. And that's no longer in your control, by the way. That's what they choose to do next. And then the impact is how the community as a whole might change as a result. I'm going to give you a really simple example of how this works with a machine. Now, some of you might recognize this product. A few of you were at IDDS 2014 in Tanzania. This is Frank, and he and his team worked on a manure spreader. You remember this project, Oscar? He worked on a manure spreader, which would help to improve the soil fertility in a village called Mbulubulu, outside of Arusha. And I actually worked with Frank to develop a theory of change for his manure spreader. And it was pretty simple and straightforward, unlike, by the way, theories of change for workshops. But I'll show you how it works with Frank's. So for Frank, his input is the spreader. It's the thing. the thing he has. His output is delivering that manure spreader to farmers. Farmers are buying the spreader. Right now, there's about 85 farmers using Frank's manure spreader, which is pretty cool. So that's his output. X number of farmers are using the spreader. Of course, Frank can deliver all the manure spreaders he wants, but he can't force the farmers to actually use them. And that's output. Farmers are actually using that manure spreader to fertilize their crops. And then the impact that that could have on the community is improving crop yields, improving the incomes of those farmers, reducing hunger in that community, maybe strengthening the local economy. So you think of the impacts on sort of a societal level. So input is the thing, the manure spreader, the output is delivering the thing. The outcome is what those farmers do next, and the impact of how the community can change based on that. So you can see that some metrics we could use to capture this is maybe the number of spreaders built, the number of spreaders sold, or the number of farmers with access to a spreader. An outcome measure might be the percent or the number of farmers who are using the manure spreader. And then the impact could be something like the change in the crop yield or the change in income. And like I said before, inputs and outputs are in your control. Frank has control over how many manure spreaders he builds and sells and delivers. And then after that, it's in the farmer's hands. It's all up to them what they do with the thing that Frank offered. And so this is how we wrote the theory of change. If Frank builds a manure spreader and delivers it to farmers, then farmers will use the manure spreader to fertilize their crops. Crops yields will improve, which will improve farmer incomes, reduce hunger in the community, and strengthen the local economy. So we did that together, and it's helped because actually now Frank is using some of these metrics to help promote the manure spreader in the community and sell it to more farmers, which is really exciting. So this is my favorite mug. There's an input, output, coffee delivered to a person, and outcome. But what about trainings? What about workshops? It's not a machine. It's not so easy to think about what the outcome and impact should be. This is a piece of paper that when we were doing a workshop in Tanzania about trainings, we started thinking about, well, what are the inputs, outputs, outcomes, and outcomes of a CCB training? So a theory of change would sound something like, if we teach our workshop to community members, then what will happen? Now the input's pretty simple. Your input for you guys is going to be, how many workshops you organize or host, what kinds of workshops do you have, what kind of resources are you putting into those workshops? That's pretty easy to track. And the output is just the delivery of those workshops. How many people will you train? What kinds of people? Men, women, what kinds of backgrounds do they have? And then you might think of an output as what they actually produce during the workshop. If they're actually building something throughout your workshop, by the end, that could be an output, something that's sort of delivered in the process of the workshop. But the outcomes and impacts are a little fuzzier. An outcome is sort of what will they gain and what will they do next? And that's kind of up to you to decide what you want them to get and what you want them to do next. And it's up to them what they actually do next. And then the impact you could start thinking about is, what is your vision for if all of these people take what they've learned and apply it to something in their world and in their community, how will the community change? Now, we can't define that for you. That is entirely a process that you guys will go through yourselves, and in order to think about what your workshop is really doing in the world. So usually the process is to start with the impact, the kind of vision level, and ask yourself the question of, what's our vision? What are our hopes and dreams for this community that we could contribute to through this educational workshop? And this usually ends up being a nice big brainstorm, and people on your team can come together and think about what their vision is and consolidate it into a vision for impact. And then once you have that vision for impact, you move to the outcomes, and you ask yourself a little bit more specifically, who are we working with directly? what specifically do we want them to gain, and what do we hope they will do next? So you can do another brainstorming activity where you say, okay, I'm working with farmers. What do I want the farmers to do once this training is over? Maybe I want them to use the prototype they made. Maybe I want them to keep making new prototypes. Maybe I want them to take one of the particular ideas that they were taught and apply that to the way they're doing farming. So it's just thinking about the specific actions that you want them to take. And we did this with CCB, and it was really a fun, exciting way to have everybody get on the same page about what they wanted to see happen next. Just as an example, we've done this for IDDS, and just as kind of a model for you guys to maybe follow, our input is IDDS, which of course is a very complicated machine. There's a lot to it. There's a training aspect, there's a project aspect, there's the whole experience, there's the community. That's all the input organized together for this particular training. And then participants will receive this training, and maybe 6 or 8 prototypes will be produced as part of the training. But we all know here that it's much more than that, right? It's not just that a bunch of prototypes got made and people got trained and then we all go into the world. What really matters is what happens next. So yeah, one of the outcomes is that participants gain new knowledge and skills and attitudes. That's kind of an immediate short-term outcome. And in the long term, what happens next? We see that some of these projects continue. That alumni are staying engaged with the network in different ways and supporting each other. We see that many IDDS alums go on to spread design education and co-creation to their own communities, like you guys are doing. So congratulations, you've met an IDDS outcome. And then when we think about the impact, we think about the impact in terms of the improved access to the technologies that are produced. We think about the impact of the culture of innovation and problem solving that is spurred on by IDDS. And we think about the improved livelihoods that come out of people engaging in this kind of work. So that's how we think about it for IDDS. We've identified certain outcomes as being important to us. We want to see projects continue. We want to see network members engaging. We want to see them spreading co-creation and design in their own communities. But it might be different for you. You might say, okay, I'm teaching an electronics workshop. What I really want is for people to go home and take apart appliances in their kitchen and learn how they work. Or what I really want is for people to start their own electronic businesses. So just thinking about what those outcomes are that you're interested in seeing in the future, and agreeing on those as a group, and then focusing your workshop in that way. So there's lots of different ways you can gather this kind of information for inputs, outputs, outcomes, and impacts, and all of the feedback that is important throughout all of that. You can use things like applications, rosters, sign-up sheets, just to track who's there and what kind of person they are, if you want to be able to know who you're reaching. You can keep track of workshop schedules and write-ups to understand your inputs. Participant surveys are a great tool to understand participants' goals and also what they took away, and also get their feedback. So I recommend these as a tool both before and after the workshops. You can do participant interviews or focus groups where you can talk to them in a group, and organizer reflections for anyone who's participated in IDDS. We usually do these as well, and these can be great ways to capture this type of information. I threw up a few survey questions that I've found really useful in the past for IDDS, for CCB, and for other kinds of workshops. So I find it's really helpful, especially when you're trying to understand what outcomes you want to achieve, to understand participants' goals, to have them have a say in what your outcomes could be or should be. So in a pre-survey, you might ask them, what do you most hope to learn in this workshop? That's great feedback for you guys, and that's a great way for you to think about your goals. And then after the workshop, you could ask, all right, now that the workshop is over, what are your goals for the next however many of months? How do you see yourself applying this in your life? And you can ask that in an open-ended way, or you can ask it in a closed way. You can say, here are the things, here's a list of things, which of these are goals of yours. You can ask them questions about their learning. You can ask it in an open-ended way by saying something like, what is the most valuable thing you learned in the workshop? Or you could ask it in a closed-ended way by saying, rate yourself on the following skills before and after the workshop. How confident did you feel working with wood before the workshop, and how confident do you feel working with wood now? How confident did you feel sketch modeling before the workshop? How confident do you feel now? And that helps you measure a little bit of how their perceived changes in skills are. In terms of feedback, you can ask questions like, what was your favorite part of the workshop, or what aspects could be improved and how? That's an open-ended question that people can expand on. Or you can ask it in a more closed-ended way. Please rate the following parts of the workshop on a scale of poor to great, and break it down into different parts. And then in terms of outcomes, you can follow up with your participants maybe a month after, maybe 2 months, 6 months, depending on the kind of workshop. And you can say, hey, remember that workshop we did? What's changed for you since then? Are you doing anything differently? What are you doing differently? And if there are specific outcomes or activities that you really want to know if they did, like if you want to know they started fixing things around the house, or they started their own business or something like that, you can actually list those things and say, have you done any of the following activities? Check which ones you've done and tell us a little bit more about them. And that's a way you can start measuring the more long-term outcomes of your program. And then finally, I'll say this before we open it up for more discussion, is that the most important thing about measuring is not collecting the information, it's using the information. So don't collect anything you're not going to use. It's just a waste of your time and all your participants' time filling out surveys with questions that you're not going to look at. So whatever you collect, make sure you use it. Talk with each other. Have meetings with your team where you talk about your results, you talk about the data, the insights you're getting, discuss how they might change how you do things next time. Share it with us and the rest of this community, because you guys are doing stuff that's new and exciting, and the lessons you learn are really valuable, not just to your team, but to everybody on this call and beyond. And it really, really helps everybody to learn from your lessons. And then finally, share with the world. You have stuff to celebrate, and you might want to promote some of these successes. So feel free to put some of this data out there in the world and use it to promote your work, or just to be happy and feel good about yourself, as Victor said. So I'm going to open it up now. That's my email address. I am always happy to look at your surveys or your data or your plans for things like that and answer questions. I really like this stuff. So if you have confusions or questions or ideas, I'd really love to continue that conversation. And we'll do that now as well. So we got some time for questions, so I'm going to open it up.
More than a question, we were discussing like sometimes the word impact is wrongly used.
Yes, it is all the time.
And yeah, you say that the workshop had some immediate impact on someone, and it's correctly, like, it's better to make that distinction, because for a donor or someone, that will not make sense, like, yeah, you cannot control the impact something will have on a person or a community or something.
That's a great insight, Oscar. And actually, there have been papers written about how everybody defines impact differently. It's one of those words, kind of like innovation, that is used to mean everything, and so that it means nothing. So almost every donor and every organization has a different definition for impact. So I try to use it cautiously and conservatively, and try to use more words like outputs and outcomes, which are a little bit more specific. And I try to reserve the word impact for like community level, long-term change. But that's not universal. Not everybody uses it that way, but monitoring and evaluation professionals tend to use it that way. But that's not always your audience. So, but I think being careful with how you use the word and being conscious of what you have control over and what you don't have control over, I think is really important.
Mhm. Marian, are you still on the line? Can you hear us? I may have muted you. Hold on.
Yes, I'm still here.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from you as well, especially since you asked that great question at the end of the last session. How was any of this
Okay.
what you're doing?
Okay, sure. So first of all, yeah, thanks Laura for the presentation. First of all, I think it's really something that I can use in future, and at least now it will give me some idea of how to go forward. And I think it's really something that I can just think about and use for my next my next workshop.
Cool.
So for me, what I used, I didn't really have like a survey, but I'm thinking about using it for the next workshop. And I guess for me, what my question would be is, okay, once you have the feedback, and once you have the feedback, what's the way forward? Yes, I can use it to improve my next workshop, but for now, like the one that I just did, how do they have expectations? How do I meet those expectations?
Yeah, that's a really great point. Like if you do a survey right at the beginning of the day and they all say, we want to learn about metal. And you're like, well, I didn't bring any metal today. You can't necessarily, adjust in the moment.
Yeah.
But sometimes you do have flexibility. Like when I give this presentation, for example, sometimes I'll sort of start, and I didn't do this time, I did a bad job, but sometimes I'll start and be like, okay, would we rather focus on surveys, or would we rather focus on theory of change, or would we, and I'll kind of feel out the room and say, all right, great, let's focus on this thing, depending on what the feedback is. If you're able to do a survey like a week or two before the actual event, like if people are signing up online and you can have them fill out a survey when they register, then that might be able to help you adjust to it. But I think you're right, Marianne, that for the most part, you can't necessarily adjust in the moment. You might just use it for the future and say, it seems like, wow, almost everybody or a majority of the people coming to my workshop are expecting this thing, and that's not really what I'm delivering. So in the future, I can do one of two things. One, I can change my workshop to meet their expectations for future workshops. Or two, I can market myself differently. Maybe I change the title of my workshop so that the people's expectations coming in are clearer and more aligned with what I'm actually offering. But what I like about the goals question in particular is it helps me understand what the outcomes could be. So if people say, like, I'm taking this workshop because I have this business and I want to start using co-creation techniques as part of my business, then I'm like, okay, that is something I should measure. I should be following up with my participants 1 month later, 2 months later, and say, hey, are you applying co-creation principles to your business now? And that it could be a measure of success. That helps them give you input on what your theory of change should be. And a theory of change, by the way, is a prototype, and it keeps evolving. It doesn't have to stay put. It'll keep growing as you learn.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Marianne.
I think something I might add to that, Marianne, is kind of going back to, how it's like the design cycle. You're taking your feedback and you're looping it back in. So this feedback is really helpful for you to scope your objectives and say, can I really achieve this in this amount of time? Can I teach metal?
Okay.
Can I do this? So it's hopefully a good indicator for you. And sharing that with other people, like, now you are welcome. You're an expert now, Marianne. You've now delivered. You can share from your experience, like, yeah, that was with this group of people, that was way too long, and here's why. So those are good things to remember.
Okay.
And to add to that too, those of you that have been organizers at IDDS, they know that there's also an organizer's retreat afterward. So there's these really great things you can do with participants, but don't neglect working with the other organizers and spending some time right after the workshop to sit down and kind of assess how people feel and what they feel are the strengths and what they feel are some of the weaknesses. So then they can use that kind of information to improve next time. In a lot of cases, having kind of an open space where people can feel comfortable to share how they felt the workshop went can help you a lot if you're the one that's managing the workshop. Has anyone done that? What kind of feedback have you received if you've done a workshop, and how have you incorporated that for next steps? Does anyone have a story to share?
I see our Guatemalan friends whispering. Oh, Carl, actually. You might be on mute. Let me unmute you. All right, you're unmuted. Go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, so we haven't been able yet to measure a workshop. So we did a workshop last month, and how we did our survey was basically just spending time with the participants and asking them questions about where they were before and after the workshop, and then on what would be the use case for what they learned during the workshop. And I was planning to go back and measure what has been done so far, or the outcomes of that workshop, and we plan to do that sometime next month. But I think in my next workshop, which is the June 4th, which will be in Ghana, I think I'll have to pick some notes from what's mentioned today, especially the theory of change, which will actually be able to direct me on how to grab some ways and be able to use it to in the outcomes of what they were learning during the workshop.
That's great. Carl, I really liked your use of the term use case for this. Like, that's a great design term that applies perfectly to monitoring and evaluation. What is the use case for this workshop? What is the value proposition? Why are we bothering to spend our time on it? What should the outcomes be? I think that's a great way of thinking about it, and I congratulate you for thinking about this so much already.
The cool thing about this is, go ahead, Carl.
No, thanks, Laura, for sharing this. It's quite insightful, and I think it's very useful for my next workshop. And I'll have things in place, and this for me is quite important because it helps me in particular to plan for the next workshop. And I think with what you shared today, it's quite useful for us.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I think it's interesting listening to each of you at different points. This is kind of, learning is something that's obviously important to all of you and something that you're already doing, right? Like, you'll talk with each other, your co-facilitators, immediately right after, and maybe you go out to dinner together and you already talk about it. You're already talking with some of the participants. So it's really good to have some of these tools as like, what questions should I prioritize during that time? Or like, what are things that I really want to know? Victor, what are your thoughts? How is this useful for you?
Actually, I see really amazing because today I was at University of Dar es Salaam, and they asked me to help them with students, technical students, to help them monitor the result from the project of the students.
Oh, great.
And on my way back, I was thinking maybe this is the indication for me they need a workshop on how to how to do their project, because they are trying to create a different type of technologies, but they need to know what is needed in the society. But their work should be very useful to them because they are students and they are on the final year. So as you were speaking here about the survey, actually I was thinking this was just an accidental survey to me, because I got from those lecturers at University of Dar es Salaam that they need the student to be inspired and being directed on what they have to create for the site, because they are going to be their output. So they want the student to be good. Yeah. So actually, to me, listening to this, I was quite here and wondering, hey, this was a bit special day for me because it's like from the morning to this time, everything was just targeting on one thing, actually. Even what I'm hearing now. Yeah. So it will be useful, but it's useful even now because I came back home and said I will sit and think what to do with the students, and I get this input right now. And actually, I just want to get this this file, the PowerPoint file you are using, because I have to repeat this night.
Perfect.
I was trying to prepare for what I want to convince the lecturers at the University of Dar es Salaam that I can run the workshop for their students even before August, because I wanted to run the workshop in August, but I can run it twice, I think.
Great.
Before the excitement goes down, because that's what I want to do. So if you can send me the file, I will be very thankful, because I want to go through it this night, actually.
Great. Well, it should be in your inbox already, Victor, because I said
Okay.
at the beginning of the call. So
Okay, no,
use
I will
it.
check it.
If you want to talk just you and me before you deliver it, if you want to talk a little bit more about it or any other resources that might be useful, I'd be happy to chat with you about that too. So that's exciting that you find even another use for it, not just for a workshop, but also for a machine, which is work for it.
Great, and maybe I'll have your email address, because
yeah, it's right in the PowerPoint, and I sent it too, so it should be in your inbox.
Okay, thank you.
Well, we have a few more minutes left. I'd love to give our Guatemalan friends an opportunity to share as well what you guys thought. And also, if you guys want to share any tools that you've used in terms of for that learning process, like what you found is helpful for you, because I think you guys have gone through a few by now, and kind of what do you guys normally do to funnel that learning back into what you're doing?
Yeah. So what we were talking about, getting the feedback, what we have done very interestingly, I think, is not necessarily on one of the workshops that we have run, but on the courses that we teach in the university. And because usually in the semester we have like 2 or 3 design projects, and right after the first one, we always do like this kind of 1-hour feedback session with our students. So it's not necessarily a survey, it's more of a conversation. I mean, for us it has turned out with very good results, because it kind of puts us in a kind of vulnerable position, and that allows, like the dynamics to change to our students. And we have actually realized that relationships and all the dynamics has gotten so much better after that, because I mean we understand more clearly what they are expecting. We understand what we have done wrong, and they realize that we realize that, and we're okay with that, and we are realistic to make that better and to get things done in a better way. So I know, I mean, we have even joked about that we would love to do that at the beginning, but of course we cannot do that at the beginning, because there's nothing that we have done wrong. We usually do things wrong on purpose. But we definitely do things wrong all the time. So that's one thing that I think has very positive impact. But I had not figured out how to translate that to workshops. Mainly if they're short workshops, or one day, whatever workshops. And was one of the questions that I had was, how often do you redesign a workshop? I mean, if you have a series of workshops, like short workshops, and you have like one every 2 weeks with the same group of people, should you be, or different groups of people, should you be redesigning it and, like making changes each time, or you design, okay, I'm gonna do this season of workshops and then collect the feedback from all of those different, I don't know, that's one of the questions I had. And
yeah, those are great comments and questions. First off, I love your comment about how how the feedback process improved relationships because it leveled the playing field, it made you more vulnerable, it made people feel like they were being heard. And I think that's a big part of sharing data with participants is like, you gave us this information, we're sharing it back with you, we're making sure that this is a larger conversation. And I think that people feel really appreciated when they're asked for their input. So I think that's really awesome that it was able to change relationships for you guys. In terms of redesigning workshops every time, I think you're totally right. It might be unrealistic to revamp every week, and that would be probably too much of a tall order. I think certainly you can react to small things. If you're getting feedback for something that's like a pretty easy fix, then you can change that from workshop to workshop. If it's just like, oh, this part was a little too long, or, you know, we would have really liked to break for lunch in the middle, you know, something like that, that's like pretty easy to fix. But if the feedback is like, this totally missed the mark and it's completely, you know, that's hard to do in just a couple of weeks. So it might be better to sort of keep the pretty much the same model, use that a bunch of times, collect the feedback over several iterations of that, and then for a new series, make a more substantial change. So I guess the answer is both. You can make easy changes quickly and harder changes in the long run.
And to tag on to that, I think Omar, or maybe some of the other people who have been organizers before, this is something I've shared. I heard on a podcast once, there's the 80-20 rule in terms of feedback after any given event or conference. There'll be about 80% satisfaction, 20% dissatisfaction. That's normal. And just knowing that we can't make everybody happy, but to acknowledge those voices and kind of going back to what Laura was saying, if you're running the same model over and over, that gives you a bigger pool to observe from, because it may just be that one particular workshop didn't work out well, you know, because they weren't in the right frame of mind, or the setting wasn't right, or it was just loud outside or something. So it gives you a good set of data to pull from if you've run it 6 times and you've just modified a few things. But like if your goals are consistent, your learning objectives are consistent, then you have something you can really look at and say, okay, what really was a big issue or not. So like, about an 80-20. Obviously, it's great if we can get 100% people happy and learning, but the reality is it's about an 80-20 split is normal.
Right. And you can't respond to every negative comment because it's true, you won't please everybody. And it's true that sometimes you'll just have a fluke, like maybe you just have a cold one day and so you're just not as effective as a teacher. And that doesn't mean you should redesign your workshop. It just means, you know, go drink some orange juice and tea and get better. And then next week, you know, the exact same workshop will be a lot better. So more data is probably good. Like you said, a bigger sample size probably is a more reliable result.
Okay.
And the other thing that I would add too is that sometimes the data validates your feelings, and that's good because that way you know that you're on the right path. Sometimes you know something didn't go well and it wasn't a good fit between the content and the participant profiles, for example. And when the data validates it, then you should, that's good. You have 2 points that you can trust. If your feelings don't match up with the data, maybe you can also do a little bit more of an inquiry of why that is, right? Is it a blind spot on your end? Is there something that's happening? So I would suggest that if there's some people that when they see things that don't agree with what they think, then they push it back. But if there is this discrepancy, then please go explore and see why that is. And sometimes that answer may also surprise you. So you may end up changing something in a way that you weren't expecting.
Well, we are just about at our hour, and I want to be mindful of people's time and also thank Laura real quick. I know that Hewan popped on the line. Hewan, did you want to make any final comments or anything? Any ideas you want to share? I think you're on mute. Let me unmute you. Hold on. Okay, go ahead.
Hi guys, sorry I'm late. I agree with you guys regarding data evaluation, but one of the things that I always kind of get confused is a lot of people, when you try to get feedback, they tend to, you know, what's the word for it? always try to say good stuff, right?
Mhm.
So it's really hard to like sometimes like figure out if what they're saying is true or not. And for me, I always try to make it. I always tell them that I'm never going to share this information. I don't want your name or email or any information. So just try to be as truthful as possible, like during the surveys or different like evaluation or interviews. But still, there are still always this, you know,
Bias
thing,
towards the
yeah,
positive.
exactly, bias. Yeah, that always happens. And then I was wondering if how you guys actually dealt with this kind of bias.
It's a great point, Heewon. It's something I've tried, and I've experienced the same thing. Something I've tried that's worked well for me is, first of all, separating it into 2 questions instead of 1. So instead of having 1 question that's like, just give me your feedback, then everyone will say, it was great. But if you ask 2 separate questions, one is like, what worked really well, or what was your favorite part? And then you follow that, like let them say all the great stuff first, get that out of their system, and then follow that up with what could be improved, what could make this better. And I specifically word it that way, what could be improved, what could make it better, instead of saying what was bad or what didn't work. Because people are more, especially in certain cultures where it's like rude to be critical, people are more apt to give their input if they're like, oh, how could it be even better for the future, right? Just like be part of the design process. They're excited to contribute ideas and recommendations and suggestions. It's a little bit more positive in spin, where there maybe would be resistant to like insult you. So just asking it in 2 separate questions and asking the question with words that say, how could this be better? What are your suggestions? I think that tends to have people feel more comfortable. And the anonymity point is great also, not requiring that people put their names down. I think that is definitely helpful towards this as well. Great point, Heewon.
Yeah, I think I can add there. Also, please make sure that you won't make them think that you will feel bad if they... So when you ask that question, what went bad or whatever way you want to ask it, be sure that you are happy to hear that. That will encourage them to tell you. But if you make them feel that you will feel bad, then they will not tell you.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Make it so that they feel like they're helping. Like, we're going to do a workshop again in a month in this community again. Like, help us make it better. Be helpful, and that people like to be helpful.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, guys, we're right at our time. Thank you guys so much for joining and sharing your ideas. Thank you, Laura, for giving us some tips and tools, and guys for sharing your stories. Next week, we'll be back with skill builders and Anna Konstantinova. So hope you guys can come and share some of yours. I know some of you guys have some of your own as well. And again, if you have ideas or thoughts, post them on the Facebook group. If you have any pictures, Marian, if you want to share any pictures from your past workshop, post them up. Any other ideas that come to mind, feel free to share. Sharing is caring. So with that, we'll say bye and thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you.